Have you ever wondered how a scattered group of British colonies, thousands of miles across the Atlantic, broke free from one of the mightiest empires in history and then soared to become the world's greatest superpower? This is the story of the United States of America, a tale of defiance, vision, and unrelenting ambition that reshaped global history. From humble settlements under British rule to fighting a grueling war for independence, to eclipsing the United Kingdom in power, economy, and influence, America's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. We'll uncover the pivotal moments, the protests, the battles, the ideas that forged a nation. We'll explore how courageous decisions and innovative governance turned a fledgling country into a global titan. And we'll see how America's rise changed the world forever. So, let's embark on this epic journey together. Are you ready?
A good shipment then.
Indeed. The quality is excellent.
In the early 1600s, British adventurers and families braved perilous voyages to establish settlements along North America's eastern coast. From Jamestown in 1607 to Plymouth in 1620, these outposts grew into 13 distinct colonies, each with its own character, yet all under the iron grip of the British Crown. For over a century, the colonies thrived. Farmers in Virginia harvested tobacco, New Englanders traded furs, and southern plantations exported cotton. Ships laden with goods crossed the Atlantic, fueling Britain's wealth. In return, the colonies received manufactured goods and protection from the mighty British Navy. It seemed like a fair deal, at first. But storm clouds were gathering. By the mid-1700s, Britain, burdened by debts from wars like the French and Indian War, began imposing heavy taxes. The Sugar Act of 1764, the Stamp Act of 1765, and the infamous Tea Act of 1773 demanded payments on everyday items: paper, molasses, tea. Worse, the colonists had no voice in the British Parliament. Taxation without representation became their rallying cry. Imagine paying taxes to a distant government that ignores your protests and denies your rights. How would you feel? For the colonists, it was an insult, a spark that ignited deep resentment. Taverns buzzed with debate, pamphlets circulated fiery arguments, and a sense of unity began to emerge.
Gentlemen, these grievances can no longer be ignored. We must act decisively.
But what of the consequences, Mr. Hancock? Open defiance is a perilous path.
By the 1770s, resentment exploded into open defiance. The colonists weren't just grumbling, they were acting. In 1773, the Boston Tea Party became a defining act of rebellion. Disguised as Native Americans, a group of colonists, calling themselves the Sons of Liberty, stormed British ships in Boston Harbor. In a bold protest against the Tea Act, they dumped 342 chests of tea, worth millions today, into the icy waters. This was no mere prank, it was a declaration of resistance. Britain's response was swift and severe. The coercive acts of 1774, dubbed the Intolerable Acts by colonists, clamped down on Massachusetts. Boston's port was closed, self-governance was curtailed, and British troops flooded the city. Imagine your hometown locked down, your freedom stripped away. Instead of quelling the unrest, these acts united the colonies like never before. In September 1774, delegates from 12 colonies gathered in Philadelphia for the First Continental Congress. Names like Samuel Adams, John Hancock, and Patrick Henry echoed through the halls. They weren't yet seeking independence, just fair treatment. They drafted petitions, organized boycotts of British goods, and called for colonial militias to prepare for whatever came next. The stage was set for a collision. Why did a tax on tea spark such fury? Because it wasn't just about money, it was about liberty, dignity, and the right to govern oneself. The colonies were no longer just British subjects, they were becoming Americans. In April 1775, a single spark set the American colonies ablaze. Tensions between Britain and its American colonies had been building for years, over taxes, representation, and the expanding reach of the British Crown. That spark finally ignited into full-scale rebellion at the towns of Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts. British troops, sent to seize colonial weapons and arrest rebel leaders, found themselves face to face with local militiamen. Ordinary farmers and townspeople turned soldiers. No one knows who fired the first shot, but its sound reverberated far beyond the battlefield. Later immortalized as "the shot heard round the world," it marked the official outbreak of the American Revolutionary War, signaling that the Age of Empires would soon face a new challenge: rebellion in the name of liberty. In the face of a powerful and professional British military, the colonies knew they needed unity and leadership. The Second Continental Congress met in Philadelphia and established the Continental Army, appointing George Washington, a respected Virginian plantation owner and veteran of the French and Indian War, as commander-in-chief. Washington's forces were outnumbered, under-equipped, and often unpaid. They lacked uniforms, food, and even bullets. Yet their greatest strength wasn't material, it was moral. These men weren't fighting for territory or power. They were fighting for a radical idea: that government should derive its power from the consent of the governed. Freedom, democracy, and the right of a people to self-rule, these were the values that drove them forward, even when odds were bleak. The war began with skirmishes and slowly escalated into large-scale battles. At the Battle of Bunker Hill, though the colonists were eventually forced to retreat, they inflicted significant casualties on the British, proving that untrained Americans could hold their own against one of the most powerful armies in the world. Meanwhile, Thomas Paine's pamphlet Common Sense stirred public sentiment, calling for total independence and challenging the legitimacy of monarchy itself. In July 1776, the colonies formally broke ties with Britain through the Declaration of Independence, authored by Thomas Jefferson. It was a bold political statement that transformed the conflict from a rebellion into a revolution. But revolution came at a price: bloodshed, hardship, and sacrifice on an unimaginable scale. Perhaps no chapter in the war revealed the sheer determination of the Continental Army more than the brutal winter at Valley Forge, 1777 to 78. Starving, barefoot, and exposed to freezing temperatures, Washington's troops suffered immense hardship. Disease and death were rampant, morale was dangerously low, and desertion was common. Yet it was in this suffering that the American spirit was steeled. With the help of Baron von Steuben, a Prussian military officer, the ragtag army was transformed into a disciplined fighting force. Soldiers learned tactics, drills, and organization, giving them the professional edge they would need in battles to come. Valley Forge became a symbol of resilience, loyalty, and the cost of liberty. The tide began to turn in 1778, when the Kingdom of France, long an enemy of Britain, officially entered the war on the side of the Americans. The alliance came after the American victory at Saratoga, which proved to France that the colonies had a real chance of winning. France brought not just symbolic support, but crucial material aid, funding, weapons, troops, and most importantly, a powerful navy that challenged British control of the seas. This international dimension turned the American Revolution into a global conflict, forcing Britain to divert its attention and resources across continents. Without French intervention, America's struggle might well have failed. With France's help, the Continental Army mounted a decisive campaign. In 1781, at the Battle of Yorktown, British General Lord Cornwallis was surrounded, trapped by Washington's forces on land and the French Navy at sea. After weeks of siege, he surrendered, marking the effective end of major combat operations. It was a stunning reversal. An empire had been humbled by a band of revolutionaries and a dream of liberty. In 1783, the war officially ended with the signing of the Treaty of Paris. Britain recognized the United States of America as a free and independent nation, with territory stretching from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River. The colonists had done the unthinkable. They had taken on the might of the British Empire and won. But as the guns fell silent and flags were raised, one truth remained: independence was only the beginning. Could this new nation survive? Independence won, America faced a monumental challenge, creating a government that balanced power with freedom. Early attempts, like the Articles of Confederation, faltered, too weak to unite the states. In 1787, delegates gathered in Philadelphia for the Constitutional Convention. Led by figures like James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, they crafted the U.S. Constitution, a revolutionary blueprint. It established a federal government with three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial, each checking the others to prevent tyranny. Why was this so groundbreaking? Because it trusted the people to govern while guarding against chaos. In 1791, the Bill of Rights was added, enshrining sacred freedoms: speech, religion, press, and the right to bear arms. These documents weren't just laws, they were a beacon for democracy worldwide. But building a nation meant more than parchment. The US states had to forge a shared identity, navigate rivalries among states, and prove it could stand tall among nations. The Founding Fathers laid the groundwork foundation, but the road ahead was fraught with trials. The 19th century was a period time of elite, relentless expansion and transformation. The US states pushed westward, acquiring territories through the St. Louisiana Purchase in 1803 and the Mexican-American War in the 1840s to 1846. Pioneers in covered wagons crossed plains, building towns from the Mississippi to the Pacific. The Industrial Revolution fueled growth. Factories churned out goods, railroads crisscrossed the land, and steamboats plied the rivers. But progress came with deep divisions. The issue of slavery tore at the nation's unity. Northern states opposed it. Southern states depended on it. By 1861, the Civil War erupted, a brutal conflict over slavery and states' rights. Abraham Lincoln led the Union to preserve the nation. The Battle of Gettysburg and Emancipation Proclamation marked turning points. In 1865, the Union's victory ended slavery and reunited the country, but at a cost of over 600,000 lives. The Civil War was a crucible. It redefined America as a nation committed to freedom, at least in principle. Rebuilding, known as Reconstruction, aimed to heal wounds and integrate freed people slaves, though racial inequalities persisted. Yet, America's resilience grew stronger, setting the stage for its global ascent. By the late 19th century, America's economy was surging. Fueled by industrial might, steel, oil, railroads, and a growing workforce, the US states surpassed the United Kingdom in industrial output by the 1890s. Cities like Chicago and New York rivaled London's grandeur. World War I and World War II reshaped the global order. Britain, drained by both conflicts, saw its empire wane. Meanwhile, America emerged as a colossus. Its factories supplied the Allies, its troops tipped the scales, and its wealth rebuilt Europe through the Marshall Plan. The US states founded the United Nations in 1945 and NATO in 1949, cementing its role as a global leader. Why did America rise so swiftly? Its vast resources, innovative spirit, and stable government shaped a nation ready to lead. By the mid-20th century, the US states was no longer just a power, it was the power. The Cold War, 1947 to 1991, pitted the US states against the Soviet Union in a global contest of technology, military might, and ideology. America championed capitalism and democracy, leading breakthroughs like the Kar space race. In 1969, Neil Armstrong's moon landing, one giant leap for mankind, symbolized US ingenuity. Beyond technology, America became a cultural juggernaut. Hollywood films, rock and roll, and tech giants like Apple and Microsoft spread American influence worldwide. From blue jeans to internet, the US shaped global culture. Today, the United States remains a dominant force. Its military, economy, and soft power, through media and innovation, ensure its influence. But what keeps America strong? Its ability to adapt, innovate, and inspire.